Hey, good morning. It's Pastor Jeff with your Sunday morning message. Thank you so much for tuning in with us here at Freedom Church. Mordecai Ham preached a sermon that changed the outcome of much of American Christianity. Mordecai was a tent revival preacher, and one evening at an event in Charlotte, North Carolina, two young men walked into the back of the tent. The boys were 14, and as they walked in, they realized there were no seats. So as they attempted to exit the tent, an usher walked over and told them if they want to stay, he will do his best to find them seats. He ended up walking about halfway up to the front and asked a couple people to scoot in a little bit so the two boys could sit together. Those two boys were mesmerized, and they ended up walking to the altar after the service and accepting Christ. Today we're looking at one of the MVPs of Christianity who doesn't fit the mold. She doesn't fit what you would pick if you were going to change the history for God. Hebrews 11:30 and 31 says, by faith the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days. And this next part, by faith Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. Let's look at some of the history here in Joshua chapter 2. It says, and Joshua the son of Nun sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, go view the land, especially Jericho. And they went and came into the house of the prostitute, whose name was Rahab, and lodged there. And it was told to the king of Jericho, behold, men of Israel have come here tonight to search out the land. Then the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come to search out all the land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. And she said, true, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And when the gate was about to be closed at dark, the men went out. I do not know where the men went. Pursue them quickly, for you will overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof and hid them in the stalks of the flax that she had laid in order on the roof. So the men pursued after them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords. And the gate was shut as soon as the pursuers had gone out. There is so much we can learn from Rahab and her faith. First thing we can understand is she believed. In chapter 6 of Joshua, verse 9 says, she says, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. You see, Rahab believed, and her faith made her stand up and do what was asked of her in a very difficult time. She was asked to house the spies who were sent to check out the land they were headed to, putting her and her family's lives in grave danger. You see, sometimes we see the immediate circumstances. We can only react to what is going on. We make major decisions based on what we can see, what the immediate circumstances are in our lives. That's anxiety and worry-driven life. That's a fear-based life. That's not faith. For instance, your shopping cart looks a whole lot different if you shop while you're hungry, doesn't it? We shop different when we're hungry. There are snacks and things that we don't need that go in that shopping cart if we shop while we're hungry. And you make a different decision about major life things if you're depressed or tired or excited. But when we react based on our surroundings, based on our mood, we scratch faith out of the equation. It's the inability to see past the next few minutes. It was, and it would have been, very easy for Rahab to say, nope, no thank you. I could be put to death. My family could be punished for this. You're not staying with me. But she had faith. She believed, and she heard. Verse 10 says, for we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, whom you devoted to destruction. She said, listen, I've heard all the miraculous things that God has done, and I have faith that he's going to keep on showing up. She didn't think God was done. She didn't see the miracles God had performed and think they had taken away from some power that he was going to be able to use to rescue her. So she heard, she had faith, she believed, and she confessed. Verse 11 says, and as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no spirit left in any man because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. God is in heaven. He's far above all, and he knows what is going on. He is actively working out his plan. And she admitted her heart melted at the thought of all that was going on and what was about to happen. It's about perspective. It's about view. Football teams used to make all of their calls on the field, from the sideline, from a side perspective. But once they started using radios and headsets, they now have someone sitting far above the field, calling a lot of the defensive and offensive plays, or at least helping someone make the calls. They've got a bird's eye view. They've got a view of the whole field. The coaches realize they cannot see everything as well on the field as someone up above can. God has the best view. We simply need to get our direction from Him. Stop making decisions based on what you see and start making decisions based on what He knows. Not only does He see it better, He already knows the ending. Because here's the truth of the matter. We do not see things as they are. We see the things as we are. When we're full of doubt, when we're down, when we're anxious, when we're worried, we're only seeing today. And we're only seeing things at the condition of our heart and the condition of our faith and our mind. But if we're strong faith and we're believing that God has it under control, we see it completely different. Rahab saw things completely different. Verse 12 tells us that she prayed, "Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that as I have dealt kindly with you, you also will deal kindly with my father's house and give me a sure sign." You see, there are times where you know someone is going to do something for you, and you send a gentle reminder, don't you? You go, "Hey, just reminding you, you said you'd do X, Y, Z." This is not like the meme, okay? This is not the meme that's going around on social media that says, women, if your man told you he will do it, he will do it. There's no need to remind him week after week and month after month. Okay, this is not what we're talking about here. No, this is God. But Rahab and her family's lives were at stake. So she said, "Hey, gentle reminder, God, I did what you asked me to do. Please keep the deal." And guess what? She received. Verse 14 says, "And then the men said to her, our life for yours, even to death. If you do not tell this business of ours, then when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you." She got the promise that as long as those two spies were alive, she was going to remain alive. And once they had land, they were giving her land. They were keeping their word. So then she went to work. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was built into the city wall, so that she lived in the wall. She had a prime location, prime for the spies and prime for their getaway. And she used it. Location, 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 right? I tell parents this all the time. God has placed you where He can best use you. Stop driving across town because you think things are better for your kids. Stop going to that school way over there because you think things are better for your kids. God placed you where He plans to use you. Next we see that she obeyed. Verse 18 tells us, "Behold, when we come into the land, you shall tie this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down. And you shall gather into your house your father and mother and your brothers and all your father's household." Verse 21 says, "And she said, according to your words, so be it." Then she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window. She did just as what was asked of her, the way it was asked, and it was all based on her faith. The scarlet cord, no doubt, was going to bring some comments and some questions, but she trusted God and the men who had sent her. Finally, we see that she triumphed. Now, this is right after the people walked around the city wall for 7 days. They shouted on day 7 and the walls fell. She lived in the walls, remember? This is where we pick it up with Rahab and her rescue. Joshua 6:21-25 says, "Then they devoted all in the city to destruction, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys, to the edge of the sword. But the 2 men who had spied out the land, Joshua said, 'Go into the prostitute's house and bring out from there the woman and all who belonged to her, as you swore to her.' So the young men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab and her father and her mother and her brothers and all that belonged to them. And they brought all their relatives and put them outside the camp of Israel, and they burned the city with fire and everything inside it. Only the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. But Rahab and her father's household and all who belonged to her, Joshua saved alive. And she has lived in Israel to this day, because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent out to spy on Jericho. So, do you have the faith to see beyond your current situation? Do you have the faith to see beyond your circumstances? When you get that bad diagnosis, when you struggle financially, when your relationships are on the ropes, can you see past it? If you can't, you're not living by faith. You're living by sight. Rahab saw far beyond who she was, and she saw far beyond what she deserved, and she saw far beyond what was happening right in front of her. And she is one of the heroes of the Old Testament, even though she lived a not so great lifestyle. You see, who you are means nothing when God is ready to move. Whose you are and whom you believe in means everything. She lived out 2 Corinthians 5, 6, and 7. It says this: so we are always of good courage. We know that while we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. Here it is. For we walk by faith, not by sight. If Rahab had walked by sight, she would have seen herself as unworthy. She would have pushed her mistakes and her sins to the forefront and left her faith out of the equation. If she had walked by sight, she would have been afraid of the circumstances and the punishment she could face by helping out the spies. But she didn't. She had made many, many fleshly mistakes in her lifetime. But when God called on her, she walked by faith, unafraid, because God was in control. Now, fear could be a good thing. Think about fight or flight. Fear brings that up. Fear releases adrenaline and helps you survive situations you may not survive without adrenaline. But fear is referred to many times as a spirit. And God's word tells us He did not give us a spirit of fear. When you are in the presence of God, the spirit of fear has to leave, because in the presence of God, there can only be peace. Rahab lived a life of faith, not based on what she'd done or who she was, based on whose she was and whom she believed in most strongly. She saw beyond her circumstances, beyond her situations, and she was used by God in a very simple way to do huge things. She did extraordinary things as an ordinary human being because she had faith. My opening illustration, Mordecai Ham preaching at a tent revival. Those two young men that usher took the time to find seats for as they attempted to leave, Grady Wilson and Billy Graham. Billy Graham preached the gospel to more people than anyone else on earth. And Grady Wilson coordinated every single one of his crusades and events. He was his booking agent, so to speak. Some would say that Billy Graham changed the world and grew God's kingdom. Some would say that Grady coordinated all of his events and he changed the kingdom, earth, and drew people to God's kingdom. Many people would say Mordecai Ham delivered that sermon. He changed the world. But God's going to see that usher as the person that made the greatest impact. Why? Because his faith, because his hunger for people to know Jesus made him make sure those two young men had a seat in the service, even when it looked like there were no seats at all. You don't know when God asks you to do something what the impact will be, and you can't measure how huge it will be until after it's done. Walk by faith, not by sight. Have a great day and God bless.